I'm an introvert, always have been. Crowded rooms drain me. Small talk wears me out. And after a long day of meetings, the thing I want most is a quiet house and nobody asking me anything. And I built a career in what might be the most stereotypically extroverted profession there is: sales, financial sales specifically. And for almost 2 decades, my whole job has been to sit across from people and earn enough trust that they'll let me help them with their money. When I started, I assumed I was at a disadvantage. I thought sales belonged to the loud people, the backslappers, the guys who could work a room and never run out of things to say. I figured I was going to have to become one of them or wash out. I was wrong about that, about as wrong as I've been about anything. It turns out that the things that make someone a good introvert are the same things that make someone good at this. So today I want to walk through why. Because if you're young, you're quiet, and you've landed in a sales role, wondering if you picked the wrong job, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me. My name is Kyle Blackwell. I'm a certified financial planner, and I've spent almost 2 decades sitting with families working through their money. And alongside that work, I started building something called Purpose Path, a financial stewardship program for young adults. Here's why this one's on my mind. A lot of young adults graduate and end up in some version of a sales role. Maybe it's an actual sales job, maybe it's financial services or real estate or recruiting or fundraising for a ministry. Maybe it's just a part of any job where you have to convince somebody of something. And for a lot of them, especially the quiet ones, they feel like they're bad at it before they even really start. I want to take that fear apart because I lived it and I came out the other side believing the exact opposite of what I started with. When I was starting out, a few people I respected sat me down and basically told me how this was going to go. They said, if you want to survive in this business, you're going to have to play the part, network constantly, be the outgoing guy in every room, be a social drinker, out at the events, work in the crowd. That's how you make it. And I want to be honest about how I took that. I took it as a chip on my shoulder. I've done that a lot in my life, honestly. Taken something somebody told me that I can't do and used it as fuel. And there's good and bad in that. Motivating yourself out of something to prove isn't the healthiest engine in the long run. And I've had to grow out of some of that over the years. But in that moment, it lit a fire. Because here's what I knew about myself. I genuinely love this stuff. I love learning about investments and how money actually works. And I had a knack for taking something complicated and explaining it simply. That was real and it was mine. And I'll be honest about something most people in my field won't say out loud. I know advisors and salespeople who don't actually know their field all that well, but they're naturally gregarious. They're fun to be around. And for a lot of them, that's enough to be just fine at this business. That was never going to be me. I couldn't outcharm anybody. So I made a decision early on. I wasn't going to become a different person just to survive this. I was going to lean into the things that were actually mine because that was the only version of this that was sustainable. And it ended up doing something I didn't expect. Leaning into who I actually was attracted the kind of people who shared my values, people who didn't want to be charmed, people who wanted to be understood, and who wanted someone who actually knew what they were talking about. If I'd spent those years pretending to be the loud guy, I'd have attracted people who wanted the loud guy. And I would have burned out trying to keep that act up. So I stopped trying to survive this business by becoming someone else. And I started trying to do it by getting really good at being me. And that one decision is the whole reason I'm still here 20 years later. Let me tell you where this started. I graduated in 2008. The Wall Street job I thought I had fell through, and I ended up building a practice from scratch by knocking on doors in small South Carolina towns. I've told that whole story in another video, so I won't go through it all again here. But the short version is that for an introvert, it was about as close to a nightmare as you could design. Walking up to a stranger's door, uninvited, asking for 5 minutes of their time 100 times a day. If you ever want to find out exactly how introverted you are, I recommend it. But here's the part I didn't get into in that other video though. I was bad at it at first. And it wasn't because I was quiet. It was because I was doing the whole thing wrong. I thought my job on that porch was to talk, to pitch, to be impressive enough, fast enough that the person would just say yes. So I'd launch into everything I knew. The products, the strategies, the credentials, trying to be the confident finance guy I thought I was supposed to be. And it didn't work. People would nod politely and close the door. It took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out why. Let me tell you about two situations that finally taught me what this work actually is. I'll keep the details vague to protect people's privacy, but the shape of both is true. In the first one, I was talking with a wife. She liked what I had to say. She understood the value of getting their finances in order, but she told me, honestly, my husband is going to be a tough guy to convince. He's skeptical of this kind of thing, so good luck. The second one was the mirror image. A husband who got it, who wanted to move forward, but whose wife was the hard sell. Same thing, he told me. She's going to be a tough one. Now, The old version of me, the door knocking version trying to be impressive, would have walked into those rooms ready to convince, ready to argue the case, ready to overcome the objection, like the sales books tell you to. That's not what I did. In both cases, I came in with respect and an ear, because here's what I'd finally figured out. When somebody's resistant about their money, it's almost never because they're stubborn for no reason. There's usually a real concern underneath it, a fear, a bad experience in the past, something they got burned by once, or something they just don't understand and don't want to admit it. And you can't argue someone out of a concern you haven't even uncovered yet. So I didn't argue. I asked questions and I listened and I tried to find the thing underneath the resistance. And in both cases, once I actually understood what was going on, I could finally speak to it, not pitch at it, speak to it. And only then did I lay out what I actually thought they should do. Both of those couples became clients, but that's not the part that stuck with me. The part that stuck with me is that years later, in both cases, it was the skeptical spouse, the hard one, the one I'd been warned about, who came back and thanked me. They thanked me for being pleasantly persistent, for being willing to deal with them directly instead of going around them, for not giving up on the conversation just because they were difficult at first, because it had genuinely changed their financial lives. People who were hardest to win became the most grateful. And I didn't win them by being more convincing. I won them by listening long enough to actually understand them. After almost 20 years, I've landed somewhere that would have really surprised my 22-year-old self. The best salespeople aren't the best talkers. They're the best listeners. And listening happens to be the thing introverts are already wired to do. Think about what's actually happening when somebody is deciding whether to trust you with something important. Their money, their house, their family's future. They're not looking for the most impressive person in the room. They're looking for someone who actually understands them, who's paying attention, who isn't just waiting for their turn to talk. That's an introvert's home field. While the extrovert is busy filling the silence, the introvert is noticing it. Noticing what the person said and what they didn't say. Noticing the thing that they got quiet about. Noticing what actually matters underneath the words. And that noticing is the whole game. I used to think my quietness was something I had to overcome to succeed at this, but it turned out to be the thing that made me good at it. Let me get specific about what actually works though, because I don't want to leave this as just just listen like it's some kind of trick. It's not a trick. It's a way of treating people. And there are really three pieces to it. The first is genuine curiosity, not the fake kind where you ask a question because a sales book told you to build rapport. People can smell that from a mile away. I mean, actually being curious about the person in front of you, their work, their life, the thing they've spent 40 years getting good at that you know nothing about. Most people you'll ever sit across from know things that you don't and have lived things you haven't. And if you're genuinely curious, you'll learn something from almost every single one of them. And the strange thing is, when you're actually curious about someone, they can feel it. It's disarming because most people spend their whole day being talked at, sold to, and rushed past. So the one person who actually stops and gets curious about them stands out without even trying. The second piece is competence. You do have to know your craft. Curiosity without competence is just being friendly. You need to actually be good at the thing that you're trying to help with. But here's the part that took me years to learn. Competence isn't about proving you know everything. It's about being trustworthy in your lane and being honest about where your lane ends. Listen, I'm pretty decent at money, but I'm genuinely not good at a whole lot of other things. There's a Jeff Foxworthy bit that I think about where he says that he's so bad at working on cars that if you ever see him lying underneath one, you should probably call for help because he didn't get under there on purpose and something has clearly gone wrong. That's me with about 90% of life outside of personal finance. And honestly, that turned out to be one of the best parts of this job because I was genuinely curious about what other people knew how to do. I had a client who was a mechanic and I'd ask him about my car, not as a sales move, but because I actually needed help with my car. And he actually knew what he was talking about. I did that constantly with a mechanic, with a contractor, with a guy who knew everything about HVAC, with a farmer who understood things about land I will never understand. I was the financial guy, sure, but in their world, I was the student. And asking somebody to teach you something is one of the most respectful things you can do. It says, you know things I don't, and I value that. And then something happened that I didn't plan. Because I was talking to so many people across so many different fields, I slowly became a kind of connector. Somebody would mention they needed a good plumber, and I knew one. Somebody needed a mechanic, or a roofer, or a landscaper, or somebody to come look at their well. I knew exactly who to send them to. I wasn't making a dime off of any of it. I was just connecting good people to other good people. And that did more for my reputation in those communities than any pitch ever could, because people stopped seeing me as the guy trying to sell them and started seeing me as the guy who actually helped. even when there was nothing in it for him. That mutual respect, where I'm skilled in my area, they're skilled in theirs, and we both know it, that's where real trust lives. Third piece is humility, and it's the one that ties the whole thing together. The old model of sales is that you're the expert, you're in charge, and you can talk the person into anything. But that's just not how trust works. Trust gets built when the other person feels like you actually see them, like you're not trying to win, like you tell them the truth, even if the truth meant they shouldn't buy from you. I've told people not to work with me. I've told people that their current plan was fine and they didn't need to change anything. And almost every time, those people came back later or sent somebody else to me because that kind of honesty is so rare that it's almost magnetic. Humility isn't a sales tactic, but it builds more trust than any tactic ever could. I want to widen this out a little before we finish because what I'm describing isn't really a sales philosophy at all. It's a way of treating people. It's just what it looks like to treat another person like they actually matter. And if you're a person of faith, like I am, there's a deeper layer to it. Every person you sit across from is made in the image of God. They're not a transaction. They're not a quota. They're a person with a whole life you know nothing about, carrying things that you can't see. And when you actually believe that, the way you sell changes. You stop trying to extract something from people and you start trying to serve them. The part that still surprises me is that this same posture also happens to be, by a wide margin, the most effective way to do the work. It's not some clever strategy. It's just that people can tell the difference between someone trying to win them over and someone genuinely trying to help. The introvert who listens, stays curious, respects the other person, and tells the truth, that person builds something the loudest guy in the room never will, a reputation for being trustworthy. And in any field where trust matters, that's just about everything. So if you're young and quiet and you've landed in a sales role, wondering if you're even cut out for it, hear me. You might be more cut out for it than the people who seem like naturals. Stop trying to be the loud, impressive version of the salesperson you've seen in the movies. Lean into what you already are. Listen more than you talk. Get genuinely curious about the person in front of you. Be good at your craft and honest about its limits. Treat the other person like they know things you don't, because they do. And tell the truth, even when it costs you. That's not a workaround for being an introvert. That's the actual job. So don't spend your 20s trying to become the loud, impressive person you think this requires. Just be yourself. It's the most sustainable thing there is. And frankly, is the only version of you that you can keep up for the next 40 years. I wrote a book called Purpose in Every Paycheck that's mostly about money, but underneath it is this same idea that how you treat people and how you handle what you've been given matters a whole lot more than how impressive you are. Links in the description. Thanks for being here. I'll see you on the next one.